The fall of Helios Prime. The war came to Helios Prime like a silent storm, merciless, all-consuming, and inevitable. General Elias Voss stood rigidly on the observation deck of Fort Vanguard, his hands clasped behind his back as he watched the sky burn. Through the thick, reinforced glass, the once pristine skyline of Helios Prime was reduced to a battlefield of fire and ruin. Enormous alien warships, their hulls shimmering with dark energy, loomed above the colony like harbingers of death. The Galactic Empire had arrived. Behind him, the command center of Fort Vanguard buzzed with frantic energy. Officers barked orders, analysts shouted out casualty reports, and the air was thick with tension. But Voss remained still, his sharp blue eyes locked onto the enemy fleet as they descended like vultures. His face bore the scars of a seasoned warrior, but nothing could have prepared him for the relentless slaughter unfolding below. The demand for surrender. "General," a voice called. It was Captain Mira Valen, her usually steady voice quivering with controlled panic. "The Xalathan fleet is broadcasting their demands." Voss exhaled slowly before turning around. "Let's hear them." A holographic display flickered to life in the center of the room. The alien commander appeared, his elongated insectoid face twisted into what might have been a sneer. His obsidian-black exoskeleton gleamed under the harsh light of the hologram. "Humans of Helios Prime." The alien's translator crackled. "Your resistance is futile. The Galactic Empire has decreed that your colony is an illegal trespass in sovereign territory. Surrender immediately, and your extinction will be swift and painless. Refuse, and you will know suffering beyond measure." Silence followed the transmission. Voss narrowed his eyes, his expression unreadable. He turned to Lieutenant Doran, the communications officer. "Broadcast my response," Voss ordered. Doran hesitated, swallowing hard before nodding. The room tensed as the feed switched, showing General Voss standing tall in his military uniform, the human emblem of Unified Terran Command gleaming on his chest. "This is General Elias Voss of the Terran Defense Force," he said, his voice calm and unwavering. "Helios Prime is home to over 200,000 civilians, teachers, engineers, families. You will receive no surrender from us." He stepped forward, eyes piercing with defiance. "You claim we are trespassers. No, we are pioneers. We are builders. We came here to thrive, not to wage war. But if war is what you bring, then we will not run. We will not bow." He leaned slightly toward the feed. "You mistake humanity's patience for weakness, our diplomacy for cowardice. You are wrong. Come then. Let us show you what humans do when backed into a corner." The transmission cut. Silence fell over the command center. "Sir, that's going to piss them off," Captain Valen muttered. Voss exhaled sharply. "They were going to kill us anyway. Now, at least, they'll know we don't die easily." The first strike. The Xalathan fleet did not wait long. Within moments, the first plasma bombardments began. The sky erupted in hellfire as glowing bolts of energy rained down upon the city, reducing buildings to smoldering rubble. The planetary shields absorbed the first wave, but the strain on the defense grid was evident. Warning sirens blared throughout the colony. "Shields at 40%, and dropping fast," one of the technicians shouted. "Divert all auxiliary power to the grid," Valen ordered, but they all knew it wouldn't be enough. Voss clenched his fists as he watched the city crumble beneath the relentless assault. He had been a soldier for over 20 years, had fought in the Titan rebellions and the Draconis border wars, but never before had he felt this powerless. "Their next barrage will break through," Valen murmured, staring grimly at the tactical display. Voss turned away from the carnage outside. "Deploy all ground forces. I want every able-bodied soldier in position. We fight for every inch of this colony. The resistance stands." On the streets below, the human defense forces scrambled into position. They were outnumbered, outgunned, but not broken. Captain Aaron Briggs, leader of the 7th Armored Division, barked orders as tanks rolled into the narrow streets, their cannons aimed skyward. Squads of soldiers moved swiftly, setting up plasma turrets and missile silos along the colony's perimeter. Civilian volunteers, armed with whatever weapons they could find, stood alongside them. "Hold the line," Briggs shouted as dropships descended from the Salathan fleet. Alien warriors, clad in thick carapace armor, poured out, weapons humming with deadly energy. The battle erupted in chaos. Human artillery roared, blasting the enemy with high-explosive rounds. Plasma rifles sizzled through the air, lighting up the battlefield in flashes of blue and red. The first wave of Salathan troops fell, their bodies crumpling under human firepower, but more kept coming. From above, the Salathan warships released stormtroopers equipped with energy shields that deflected incoming fire. They advanced relentlessly, forcing the human lines to fall back. Briggs gritted his teeth, gripping his pulse rifle. "We can't hold forever," he shouted into the comms. "We don't need forever," Voss's voice came through. "Just long enough." The final blow. Back at Fort Vanguard, Voss made a grim decision. "They're targeting civilians," Valen whispered, watching helplessly as plasma bolts tore through refugee convoys. "We can't save them all." Voss clenched his jaw. "Then we make sure they don't die for nothing." He turned to the command table, activating a hidden defense protocol. "Project Ragnarok is still online." "Yes, but—" Doran hesitated. "Sir, if we fire it, there won't be anything left of Helios Prime." Voss's voice hardened. "We were never meant to win this battle, Lieutenant, but we can make sure they suffer for what they've done." "Authorization code?" Doran asked. Voss's voice was quiet, but firm. "Omega-13." The command center went silent as a massive cannon hidden beneath the colony rumbled to life. The wrath of humanity. The ground beneath Helios Prime split apart, revealing the planetary annihilation cannon, a last-ditch weapon designed as a deterrent against overwhelming invasions. The Salathan never saw it coming. A brilliant, searing beam of light erupted from the planet's surface, tearing through the enemy fleet like a blade through flesh. The sky turned white as the energy wave obliterated the Salathan mothership, sending shockwaves across the colony. The remaining Salathan forces, suddenly leaderless, hesitated. And in that moment, humanity struck back. Briggs and his soldiers charged forward, cutting down the remaining troops. Artillery pounded the enemy with renewed fury. Voss closed his eyes, knowing that Helios Prime was lost. But the war was far from over. As the last of the human transports evacuated the survivors into deep space, he made a silent vow. The Salathan Empire thought they had crushed humanity. But all they had done was ignite the flames of vengeance. The resistance rises. The ruins of Helios Prime smoldered beneath the cold void of space. From the cockpit of the Excalibur, a stolen Salathan stealth corvette, General Elias Voss watched as the once thriving colony vanished behind a curtain of dust and fire. The Salathan fleet had withdrawn, believing their conquest complete, their victory absolute. They were wrong. In the darkness of space, humanity still endured. Voss turned to Captain Miravalin, his most trusted officer, who sat beside him at the controls. Her gnarly sharp features were worn, her uniform stained with soot and blood, but her amber eyes still burned with defiance. "All escape ships accounted for?" he asked. Valen checked her datapad. "We lost 40% of our transports before we could jump. Those that made it are running on fumes, scattered across nearby systems." Voss exhaled slowly. A bitter loss. But it could have been worse. At least some had survived. The price of defiance. A transmission crackled through the Excalibur's comms. "This is Captain Aaron Briggs of the 7th Armored Division. Our fleet regrouped at Outpost Epsilon, but we're barely holding together. Survivors are flooding in, but we've got no supplies, no weapons, and no world to call home." Voss closed his eyes. He had fought wars before, but never a war where survival itself was the enemy. Still, this war was not over. It was just beginning. "Captain," Voss responded, "send a list of your remaining assets. Personnel, firepower, ships. We can't fight the Xalathans head-on, but we can make them bleed." Briggs hesitated. "Sir, with all due respect, we lost. We had planetary defenses, fleets, and an entire military colony. And they crushed us like insects. We're outnumbered, outgunned. What are we supposed to fight with?" Voss's jaw tightened, with rage, with cunning, with the one thing that Salathan Empire has never encountered before. Briggs frowned. "And what's that, sir?" Voss's eyes burned with conviction. "Humans with nothing left to lose. The Shadow War begins." Aboard the Excalibur, the survivors worked frantically, converting the alien corvette into a makeshift command ship. Engineers stripped the ship's security locks, patched hull breaches, and reprogrammed its navigation systems. Voss stood before his gathered crew, a ragtag group of soldiers, engineers, and civilian survivors who had lost everything, but not their will to fight. "That Salathan Empire believes they've won," Voss began, his voice steady. "They believe humanity is broken, scattered, that will never rise again." He let those words sink in before stepping forward. "They are wrong." He glanced at Valen, who brought up a holographic map of the sector. Marked in red were Xalathan-controlled worlds, dozens of planets enslaved or obliterated by the Empire. "Humanity cannot fight them in open battle," Voss continued. "But we don't have to. The Xalathans are an empire built on control, order, and fear. We will shatter their control, undermine their order, turn their fear against them." He looked at each face before him. "We will become ghosts. We will strike from the shadows. We will make them fear the dark." A murmur ran through the room. A few nodded. Others looked uncertain. Voss did not let doubt fester. "We will steal their ships, hijack their weapons, turn their slaves into soldiers. Every world they have taken from us, we will take back." A moment of silence. Then a single voice spoke. "A resistance," a young technician asked. "A rebellion against the most powerful empire in the galaxy." Voss's lips curled into a wolfish grin. "No," he said. "A reckoning. The first strike." 2 weeks later, the first mission of the human resistance began. In the shadow of Tarsus EX, a small industrial planet deep in Salathan space, the Excalibur drifted through an asteroid field, hiding from the enemy's patrol fleets. Inside, dozens of human survivors prepared for battle. Their target? A Salathan supply station, a critical node in the Empire's logistics network. If they took it, they would gain weapons, fuel, and data on the Empire's troop movements. If they failed, there would be no second chances. Voss, clad in dark armor stripped from a fallen Salathan officer, checked his modified rifle. The weapon hummed with stolen alien power, the energy cells glowing a faint blue. Beside him, Captain Briggs adjusted his combat vest. "You sure about this, sir?" he asked. Voss smirked. "We don't need to win. We just need to make sure they don't forget our name." Briggs chuckled darkly. "Humanity's first revenge. I like it." The Excalibur's AI, a repurposed Salathan tactical assistant, spoke in its cold, synthetic tone. "Enemy patrols passing. You have a 3-minute window before next scan." Voss lifted his rifle. "Then let's remind the Empire that we're still here." The ambush. The resistance fighters struck like lightning. Dropping from the Excalibur's launch bay, they moved like shadows across the facility's perimeter, disabling security systems before the enemy even knew they were there. Inside, Salathan guards fell silently as human operatives cut them down with suppressed weapons. They hacked into the mainframe, extracting vital intel on Salathan fleet deployments. And then, they blew the entire station to hell. As the resistance forces escaped aboard stolen Salathan freighters, the enemy outpost erupted into a fireball, the explosion visible from orbit. The first battle of the war was won. But it was only the beginning. The message to the Empire. Days later, a message was transmitted across dozens of Salafan-controlled worlds. A transmission the Empire could not ignore. The screen flickered to life, revealing General Elias Voss. His face was scared, unyielding. His uniform, though patched together from stolen gear, carried the presence of a commander who refused to kneel. This message is for the Salafan Empire. You thought you had broken us. You thought humanity was finished. He leaned forward, his blue eyes burning with fury. You were wrong. You came to our worlds. You slaughtered our people. You burned our homes. And now, we will burn yours. The screen cut to black. And in that moment, across a dozen enslaved worlds, a new hope was born. The Salafans had made a terrible mistake. They had not defeated humanity. They had only given them a reason to fight. The fires of rebellion. The war had changed. No longer was humanity scattered, hunted, and hopeless. They had become something more, something deadlier. From the ruins of Helios Prime to the furthest edges of the Salafan Empire, whispers spread like wildfire. The humans were still alive, and they were fighting back. The birth of the resistance. In the dark expanse of space, the Excalibur drifted silently in the asteroid belt of Outpost Epsilon. On its bridge, General Elias Voss stood before a holographic map of the sector. Around him, his officers watched in silence. Captain Mira Valen, Captain Aaron Briggs, Lieutenant Doran, the last survivors of a war that should have ended with humanity's extinction. Instead, they were about to ignite a revolution. Voss's gaze swept over the table, taking in the faces of those who had chosen to fight. Ragged, tired, but determined. The Salafans rule by fear, Voss began. His voice was low, steady, a storm building beneath the surface. They think our species is broken, that we will fade away like dust. He leaned forward, eyes burning. They are wrong. Valen tapped the holographic controls, displaying a list of confirmed human survivors. Scattered cells of soldiers, engineers, smugglers, and rebels. People who had lost everything, but not their will to fight. They think they've beaten us, Voss continued. They think we're weak. His fists clenched. We will show them what happens when you push humans to the brink. Briggs grinned, adjusting the rifle strapped across his chest. So what's the plan, sir? Hit and run. Steal their weapons. Cause some chaos. Voss's lips curled. No, not chaos. He turned to Valen. How many Salafan supply routes have we mapped? She pulled up the data. 8 critical supply lanes. Hundreds of warships depended on them. If we cut these off, Voss said, we don't just hurt them. We starve them. The room went still. Briggs let out a slow breath. You're talking about a full-scale insurgency. Voss nodded. They took our homes. They took our worlds. They think they own us. His voice was sharp, unwavering. So we take their war machine apart, piece by piece. No one spoke. No one argued. It wasn't a question anymore. It was war. Operation Blackout. Days later, the first strike fell. At Station X-47, a Salafan fuel depot sat in the depths of the Anchorus Nebula. It was a vital link in the Empire's supply chain. Hundreds of warships relied on it. Until humans arrived. The Excalibur drifted through the nebula's dense clouds, its stolen Salafan stealth tech keeping it hidden. Inside, a squad of human operatives prepared for the assault. Voss, clad in combat armor, checked his rifle. The plasma core hummed softly. Everyone ready. Briggs grinned. Born ready, sir. Valen adjusted her tactical visor. Let's show them what humanity does best. Voss smirked. And what's that, Captain? She loaded her rifle with a smooth click. Survive. With a sharp nod, Voss turned to Doran. Drop the cloak. The ship decloaked, revealing itself just outside the station's perimeter. In an instant, the station's alarms blared. Salafan security scrambled. Too late. The humans struck like lightning. Briggs' squad stormed the airlocks, cutting down enemy guards in tight formation. Silenced plasma rifles, tactical precision. They'd move like ghosts. Valen's team hacked the station's mainframe, locking down emergency protocols. No reinforcements, no distress signals. And Voss, he planted the charges. As Galactic reinforcements poured in, they were met with explosions ripping through the station's fuel lines. A single detonation. And then, fire. The station erupted in a brilliant inferno, its fuel reserves igniting in a chain reaction. The shockwave tore through the nebula, sending debris spiraling into the void. And as the Excalibur vanished into hyperspace, Voss watched the flames consume the station. The first supply route was gone. The first cut in the Empire's throat had been made. The Galactic response. The attack shook the Empire. The Galactic commanders panicked. Who had done this? Who had dared to strike so deep inside their territory? The answer came days later, when a transmission hijacked the Galactic networks. Human face appeared. General Elias Voss. This is a message to the Galactic Empire. You thought we were gone. You thought humanity had fallen. A pause. Voss leaned forward. You were wrong. You will hear our name in every shadow, in every silent breath before your patrols vanish, in every whisper before your fleets burn. We are humanity. And we will never kneel. The transmission cut. And across the Galactic Empire, fear began to spread. The Empire's mistake. Months passed. The resistance grew. Human survivors emerged from hiding. Old soldiers returned to fight. New allies joined the cause. And the Galactic Empire bled. Convoys destroyed. Weapons depots sabotaged. The elite forces ambushed and wiped out. The war had changed. Humanity was no longer running. They were hunting. The Galactic High Command convened in a desperate war council. They did not understand. How could these humans, outnumbered, outgunned, be winning? They had studied humans for decades. They had mapped their strengths, their weaknesses. But they had missed one thing. They had never fought humans with nothing left to lose. And in that miscalculation, they had sealed their fate. The final blow. Aboard the Excalibur, Voss stood at the helm, staring at the Galactic capital world, the heart of the Empire. We started this with nothing, Valen said softly, standing beside him. Voss nodded. And now we finish it. Briggs chuckled. One last fight. Voss smirked. One last fight. The fleet assembled. Stolen Galactic warships, human-engineered strike craft, rogue battlecruisers from liberated colonies, a force the Empire never saw coming. As the final battle began, Voss whispered one last vow. For Helios Prime. For Earth. For humanity. The ships launched forward. And in that moment, the war ended. Epilogue. The dawn of a new age. Years later, on the rebuilt world of Helios Prime, humanity stood victorious. The Galactic Empire was gone, and in its place, a new order had risen. Not one of conquest, but of freedom. Voss, older now, watched from a balcony as ships soared through the sky. Velen approached. You did it, she said. He smiled. No, he said. We did. Humanity had survived. And they would never be conquered again.